Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc.
Venezuela's self-declared interim president hit with a travel ban and an asset freeze. Our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Wednesday, January 30th from the CMC News Center in Bridgetown. I'm Dawn Paris. Good evening. Venezuela's Supreme Court has barred opposition leader Juan Guaido, who last week declared himself the country's acting president, from leaving the country. It has also frozen his bank accounts. The move came hours after Chief Prosecutor Tarek William Saab asked the government-staffed High Court to restrict Guaido's movements and freeze any assets. Saab said a criminal probe into Guaido's anti-government activities has been launched, but he did not announce any specific charges against him. Both the Chief Prosecutor and the Supreme Court are aligned with embattled President Nicolas Maduro. As leader of the National Assembly, Guaido has immunity from prosecution unless subject to a ruling by the country's top court. The head of the court says the opposition leader is prohibited from leaving the country until a preliminary investigation is complete after he allegedly caused harm to peace in the republic. The court decision also came shortly after the U.S. said it had handed control of Venezuela's U.S. bank accounts to Guaido, whom it now regards as the country's legitimate president. Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says he believes progress has been made in the efforts to prevent an escalation of the political situation in Venezuela. And he defended the decision by the 15-member CARICOM grouping to hold talks with senior officials of the United Nations rather than the Organization of American States, the OAS. Rowley, who was part of a CARICOM delegation that met with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, as well as the permanent representatives of several countries at the UN, told reporters the group believes it's making progress because the ultimatums and the deadlines were a guaranteed path to conflict.
We can't say that we have finished this or we have finished that, and you have to respond to what is happening. So I don't know what tomorrow morning's news is going to be, right? They may decide that we don't want to talk to anybody. The time for talk is over. The previous attempt to have dialogue has failed. And those were some of the conversations that some people had. Our role is to try and say, no, we don't agree that that is so. And that is where we go, hoping that our position prevail through calmer heads. And the one thing we don't want is to end up in a situation where there is conflict and its resultant consequences for our region.
Rowley defended CARICOM's decision not to seek the intervention of the OAS in the matter. He blamed the OAS Secretary General Luis Almagro for taking on personally the presidency of Venezuela and said he had been advocating virtually an overthrow of the Venezuelan government and further recognizing the parallel government.
You may ask, why did we go to the UN and not to the OAS? The reason being that long before this level of volatility had appeared, the OAS had disqualified itself from treating with the Venezuelan issue. How? Because the Secretary General of the OAS had taken on personally the presidency of Venezuela and had been advocating, virtually an overthrow of the Venezuelan government. Trinidad and Tobago, as a country under the rule of law and a long-standing member of the OAS, and knowing the OAS Charter, had objected to that because we always knew that if the situation worsened, or even before it worsened, that the OAS was our first port of call to have this matter dealt with through dialogue and negotiation. By the Secretary General, without reference to us in the CARICOM, we don't know who else he was referred to, but without reference to us here in the CARICOM, taking on from his office an attack on a member government, that created a problem for the OAS.
Still in Port of Spain, the government is seeking advice on whether its cross-border natural gas supply deal with Venezuela will be affected by U.S. sanctions imposed on the South American country's oil company. Joe Brown of TV6 News reports.
The Dragon gas deal signed between Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro is to be executed via another agreement between Trinidad and Tobago's national gas company, Venezuela's state-owned oil company PDVSA, and Shell. The Dragon field, which is projected to produce an estimated 150 million cubic feet of natural gas per day in the first year, is owned by PDVSA. As the standoff between President Maduro and U.S. President Donald Trump escalates over Mr. Trump's recognition of Juan Guaido as Venezuela's interim president, the U.S. has hit PDVSA with sanctions and urged Venezuela's military to, quote, accept the peaceful, democratic and constitutional transfer of power, end quote. In Port of Spain, a question from the leader of opposition business, Wade Mark, in the Senate to the energy minister about the sanctions.
Can the minister state what impact this decision is likely to have on the recently concluded Dragon gas deal?
National Security Minister Stuart Young, who was directly involved in the talks for the Dragon gas deal, answered the question.
Madam President, the recent sanctions imposed by the United States of America on PDVSA are currently the subject of advice. We are seeking advice with respect to same, to understand exactly how it may, and I emphasize the word may, because as the sanctions themselves say, they start off by saying how they may affect certain things, how they may affect the Dragon deal.
Minister Young said it is premature to say what, if any, effects the U.S. sanction may have on the Dragon gas deal.
Meanwhile, police in Trinidad and Tobago are searching for clues in connection with the suspected kidnapping of 5 fishermen and a teenager by men believed to be Venezuelan pirates who are demanding $200,000 by Friday for their release. A picture of the victims has been circulating on social media. In it, the TNT nationals are seen surrounded by armed men who are carrying high-powered rifles. The 6 reportedly left to go fishing on Sunday afternoon and were expected to return home on Monday morning. But according to reports, one of the men's relatives received a call from him telling them that he and the others were kidnapped by Venezuelan pirates who were demanding the ransom. The pirates said they wanted a down payment by Wednesday and have threatened to cut off the hands and limbs of the men if the money is not forthcoming. Speaking on a radio program, Police Commissioner Gary Griffith said the situation has been complicated by the fact that it's believed the Trinidad and Tobago nationals are being held in Venezuela.
Tobago Police Service, we are doing all that is required. It is a very difficult situation. Initial reports are that they were actually outside of our waters when it is that they were actually held by these individuals. It says it doesn't say take away the fact that these are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and there is a concern it puts us in a very difficult position to do much more than we are doing because of the situation where they are not in Trinidad and Tobago waters. So, but I'm not saying that our hands are tied. There's a lot that we are doing from our end.
St. Lucia's Prime Minister Alan Chastanet easily survived a no-confidence motion in the early hours of Wednesday. Opposition leader Philip J. Pierre had moved the motion, accusing the Prime Minister of being an uncaring and reckless leader, as he called on the 17-member Parliament to support the motion that would result in Chastanet's removal as head of government. But after contributions from MPs from both sides, starting on Tuesday, the members of the House voted along party lines. When the opposition leader called for a division so that each member could vote individually, all the ruling United Workers' Party MPs stuck by the Prime Minister, while the St. Lucia Labour Party's MPs supported the motion.
The question before the House is that this Honourable House expresses its total lack of confidence in the leadership of the Honourable Alan Michael Chasney, and be it further resolved that this Honourable House calls for the immediate resignation of the Honourable Alan M. Chasney as Prime Minister of St. Lucia. I now put the question. As many as are that opinion, say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion, say no.
No! Mr. Speaker, for the record, can I have a division, please?
That is fine, good. With a vote of 6 to 11, the noes have it, the noes have it.
Prime Minister Chasney himself did not make any contribution to the debate except to correct what he said were misleading statements by opposition legislators during the marathon parliamentary session. But defending Chasney's leadership, Castries Central MP and External Affairs Minister Sarah Flood-Beaubrun said it was time for the SLP to accept that it had lost the last general election. She appealed to the opposition to stop getting in the way of government doing its work for the people of St. Lucia.
Mr. Speaker, the fact that the Leader of the Opposition brought this motion here shows a complete lack of respect for the democratic process. That is what it is. A complete lack of respect for the democratic process. The people of St. Lucia in June 2016 voted this government in and voted this Prime Minister to lead the country. It is just 2.5 years and they refuse. They refuse to accept the will of the people. That is what it is about. Because they have been in election mode from June 2016.
Coming up in Caribbean Newsline, the Barbados Central Bank Governor gives government some advice to improve economic performance. We'll be right back.
Today we're here talking about the Jesus Ferreira case, which is the police shooting case.
Yes, it was.
You represented Mr. Ferreira.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the facts of the case.
This was a series of unfortunate incidents, so to speak. Everything was done that you could do wrong in police procedures was done wrong here. The police have a confidential informant, a snitch. The snitch tells them that so-and-so is a drug dealer and is armed and dangerous.
It's interesting. You have a politician from this coalition who says something completely vulgar and stupid and beyond belief, and then the government says, no, it's not a good idea, and people then say, the government is being sensible, when in fact the whole political battleground is now controlled by the right and the far right.
Yeah.
So everything has become relative.
Welcome back. The governor of the Central Bank of Barbados, Cleviston Haynes, has told the government that this year it needs to build on last year's progress in restoring macroeconomic stability and confidence in the local economy. Haynes offered the advice on a Wednesday while delivering his economic outlook for 2019. The Mia Mottley administration was forced to implement an IMF-sponsored structural adjustment program when it took office last May in a bid to turn around the island's ailing economy. Haynes said the efficient execution of the reforms identified in the adjustment program related to tax policy, revenue administration and business facilitation, along with the IMF's performance targets, will be crucial to restoring economic stability.
Over the past decade, average growth was minus 0.7%. Revitalizing growth is therefore critical, but the forecast of 2019 is for growth to remain flat. Tourism is expected to perform favorably due to an anticipated expansion of airlift, special events like the English Cricket Tour, and an increase in ships docking at the port. This activity will be supported by the thrust towards Barbados emerging as a hub for medical education. The need to sustain the fiscal consolidation effort could continue to dampen economic activity. However, this trend can be reversed through higher levels of private sector investment. Several projects in the tourism, healthcare, and distribution sectors have been identified for startup in 2019.
The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Parliament has approved the estimates of income and expenditure for the 2019 national budget. Government has outlined measures to increase revenue from taxes, increase employment within the public service, as well as revisit pension reform. Finance Minister Camilo Gonzalez presented the figures amidst protests by members of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Teachers Union and the Public Service Union over government's handling of matters affecting them, including salary increases. In this week's Newsline business, Barbados warned that its economic recovery will be tough. Bahamian Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis hails the strong performance of the country's tourism sector and a shot in the arm for bananas in Belize.
Barbados' road to economic recovery will be a challenging one, but Central Bank Governor Cleviston Haynes says the country is on course to overcoming these hurdles thanks to the commitment from the government and people to continue with structural reform. Haynes gave this assessment in his economic outlook for 2019 on Wednesday.
Government must continue to manage its expenditure to avoid any shortfalls in its targeted goals. The external debt suspension has helped to shore up reserves, and completion of the restructuring remains important to the overall stabilization effort. Placing the debt on a downward trajectory and creating fiscal space will allow for the gradual reduction in outstanding arrears to the private sector and strengthen the medium-term growth potential. These developments should contribute to a further improvement in credit ratings.
Over in the Bahamas, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis is focusing on initiatives for economic growth while lauding the strong performance of some sectors last year. In an address to the nation this week, Minnis highlighted the robust growth in the tourism sector in 2018.
Arrivals from the U.S., which continues to be the destination's largest source market, grew by 10.7% year-on-year, or the period January through October. The outlook remains favorable for continued growth in air arrivals, with bookings for the first quarter of 2019 forecast to be ahead by 10.3% for international arrivals.
Belize has been getting help from the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture and the European Union to develop its banana industry. Bananas are the country's third largest cash crop after sugar and citrus. However, the sector has taken a hit in recent years from a series of disasters and diseases. Last year, ICA and the EU funded a project worth over $5 million to help improve production and quality. And according to industry officials, so far, the project is bearing fruit. Maricla Williams, Newsline Business.
Ahead in Newsline Sport, West Indies focused ahead of their second test against England.
I know everybody thinks I'm crazy for wanting to work with you, but that is my mantra. I want to take somebody who's not known, who wouldn't have these opportunities, and put them in an extremely better place. And yes, I'm going to capitalize on that. Of course I am. That is how this world works. I want a lingerie line. I want you to design it. I want you to see that you're much better than that crap you're putting out in your store or your closet or whatever you want to call it.
Continuing with sports now, West Indies captain Jason Holder says the team remains focused ahead of the second test against England on Thursday. The Caribbean men, written off by most prior to the series, produced an astonishing display in the opening test at Kensington Oval in Barbados to beat favourites England by 381 runs in 4 days. They're hoping to repeat the same feat in Antigua, and the captain says his side is upbeat about Thursday.
Most of the guys are pretty focused, they're really hungry. We understood we did the last game, but that's gone. I said that to the guys. The first thing I said to them was, that game is history. It's just a matter for us to move on and understand, what we need to do in order to continue being consistent. I always speak about consistency in the dressing room, and I think in order to be consistent, we've just got to be, hitting all three departments well every time we step on the field.
Holder says once West Indies remain focused, they can defeat England and win the series.
Again, I tried to focus more on what we need to do, and we just need to be consistent. We're still down at number 8, and I just think it's a matter for us to continue to build the side. But what's been encouraging is that we've seen glimpses that this team can perform and beat top sides in the world. And we've had personal success, and it's good to see us we bringing it a little bit more together as a side. So hopefully we continue in that vein, and the guys continue to be hungry for success.
Meanwhile, England will hand Joe Denley his test debut after dropping failing opener Keaton Jennings in a 12-man squad named for the critical test against the Windies. Left-hander Jennings made just 72 runs in his last 6 test innings and struggled in the opening test last weekend. The 32-year-old Denley has already played 9 one-day internationals and 6 T20 internationals and boasts an extensive first-class career which has yielded nearly 11,000 runs from 189 matches. Leg spinner Adil Rashid, who was ineffective in the opening test, has been excluded, with left-arm spinner Jack Leach coming in. West Indies speedster Shannon Gabriel and wicketkeeper Shane Dowrich have recovered from minor injuries picked up in the opening test and have been declared fit for the second match. Gabriel had limped out of the 4th day play at Kensington Oval last weekend with a bruised toe. And Dowrich batted outstandingly in the second innings to finish unbeaten on 116, but was replaced by Shea Hope behind the stumps for the entire 4th day with a sore back. But West Indies team manager Raw Lewis confirmed on Tuesday that there are no major injuries in the squad. West Indies named an unchanged squad for the upcoming test, but have added fast bowler O'Shane Thomas as a 14th man after the Jamaican acted as cover for fellow pacer Alzari Joseph for the first test. Still in cricket, newly appointed TNT Red Force head coach Mervyn Dillon says his side will not be taking defending champs Guyana Jaguars for granted when they clash in round 6 of the regional 4-day competition on Thursday. Speaking to TV6's Vinod Narawani on the sidelines of the team's preparations, Dillon says they're looking forward to the challenge.
TNT Red Force take on Guyana Jaguars in their upcoming 4-day clash at the Queen's Park Oval starting Thursday. New TNT coach Mervyn Dillon is upbeat, but at the same time, he's not taking the defending champs lightly.
I'm quietly confident. The guys have been, the sessions have been really good. Like I said, I'm really enjoying working with the guys, and I love the chemistry that I have with them. Having said that, we know the work that we have our work cut out against Guyana. They've always been a tricky team. They've been a very consistent team, even recently. So we look forward to it. We look forward to the challenge, but we have to look at the things that we can control.
Regarding the fitness and availability of the TNT players, Dillon says there is some concern regarding one of the members.
Hope got hit in practice on Sunday, so he's up in the air in terms of I suppose we'll assess tomorrow, by this evening or tomorrow morning. It doesn't look too good, but like I said, I can't write him off. I'm not the trainer or the doctors or anything like that, so we'll see what happens come tomorrow morning.
Despite 1 win and 3 losses for TNT thus far, Dillon feels his players can finish the season with a bang.
For me, it's yes, it's mid of the season, but I honestly believe I can get the guys, to play close to their potential, and for me, that is why I would get it. And if those guys play anywhere close to their potential, I know we are going to come up with at least 2-3 wins before the end of the season.
The Guyana Jaguars, who have Shivnarine Chandapal as part of their coaching staff, lead the standings, while TNT Red Force are 5th.
And finally, in football, Guyana's Golden Jaguars will begin their Gold Cup qualifying campaign against Belize in March. More in this HGP Sport report.
On March the 23rd, the Golden Jaguars are set to meet with Belize in a qualifying match for the CONCACAF Gold Cup. Training has begun at the National Training Center at Providence. GFF President Wayne Ford said the match against Belize will be a moment of national importance. He urges all Guyanese to come together as a nation to celebrate football and to support the team. According to Ford, March 23rd is the biggest match in Guyana's football in history, and Guyana is on course for making history by qualifying for the CONCACAF Gold Cup for the first time. The CONCACAF Gold Cup involves top national teams from North America, Central America, and the Caribbean, and it is to be broadcast live across the region. Ford said, "We know we have the talent, and I have every confidence in our players and the backroom staff. Coach Michael Jordan is working hard with his team here and overseas to get the preparations right. We will be ready to deliver a night to remember in March and give the nation something to really cheer about." Guyana is on 6 points in 8th place in the qualifying league table.
And that's the sport. We'll be right back.
Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing, Inc.
Like really. Follow your heart to St. Kitts and make plans to join us at the 23rd Annual St. Kitts Music Festival. 5 days of world-class entertainment from Wednesday, June 26th to Sunday, June 30th, 2019. See Butcher Banton live as he makes his epic return to St. Kitts.
Me all walk like a champion, talk like a champion. What a piece of money, girl.
Also, French Montana and Davido. If I tell you popcorn, wine for me, wine. And the legendary Smokey Robinson. This is just the first wave of announcements. Many more acts to come. For more information, log on to StKidsMusicFestival.com. The St. Kitts Music Festival, an experience like no other. Over hills and valleys too.
You know, there are about 1 million people who will soon not get a paycheck. The president and members of Congress live in such an isolated world. They have no idea how real people live. I mean, just the mental stress, the anguish of not getting paid, not going to work. Your whole life is disrupted because you're not usually at home. You're probably arguing with your spouse.
Again, the major developments of this day: Venezuela's Supreme Court imposes a travel ban and asset freeze on the country's self-declared interim president, Juan Guaido. And in sport, West Indies focused ahead of their second test against England on Thursday. That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, subscribe to ConnerNews.com. For more of our programming, log on to caribvision.tv and check out our YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow. But from all of us at CMC News, thank you for joining us and have yourselves a good night.